Peace, CO, Halito. How's everybody doing tonight? On this late hour, I had some shit to do. Excuse me. But I will be on here, I say 30 minutes to an hour. All right. So I got Cuz in the background. I'm going to bring him in on the end. And peace, Yati, LaShonda, our moderators in the building. Let go. All right. So, the topic for tonight is the Yuchi Cherokee connection through the Anikutani. All right. So, let me get the disclaimer going. And then we can get started. I'm pulling that up. Appreciate y'all chiming in, joining in tonight, observing, etc. Appreciate y'all. Did y'all have a good Sunday? Hopefully y'all did have a good Sunday. So we have the disclaimer, copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, education, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. So let me pull this up. All right, so we're going to share a little bit background. Okay, so the myths of the Cherokee. Now, the premise of this is the infamous priesthood of the Cherokee, the Jalagi, Anianwaya, Kitawagi, is the Anikutani. All right, so this is the myth that they have been sharing, the myth that the Anikutani was massacred. But this is false because the Anikutani, the remnants, the descendants still exist. That is the Yuchi, Indigenous tribal nation. All right. So let me make this a little bigger. All right, it says, and this is coming from the Myths of the Cherokee, James Mooney. People have a lot to say about him, but whenever I read shit and listen to people talk about stuff, I just sift through things. And even in the meetings, they have talked about this. And people say a lot of different stories about the Anikutani. All right. They do recognize that the Anikutani, they talked about mound builders. And when the Cherokee basically came to be in that area, they recognized that the mound builders built the mounds and that they did not build the mounds. This is what they have talked about in the meeting. So I have heard the stories. Oh, you can't hear me? Oh, wait a minute. Can you hear me now? Hold up. Let me see. Okay, now you can. Okay. All right. Good. Okay, so this is about, I don't know how long y'all couldn't hear me, so let's see. So this is the premise of the topic of today, the Yuchi Cherokee Anikutani Yuchian connection. All right. So this is the premise of what I'm discussing tonight. So I'm coming from this book. We're going to look at the myths of the Cherokee, and then from a person that is of Yuchi ancestry, we're going to look at his words and how he describes this. Okay, so here we go. The story, the myth that the massacre of the Anikutani, among other perishing traditions, is that relating to the Anikutani or the Kawatani, all right, concerning whom the modern Cherokee knows so little that their very identity is now a matter of dispute. A few holding that they were an ancient people who preceded the Cherokee and built the mounds. So they do have some things right here, okay? While others with more authority claim that they were a clan or a society in the tribe and were destroyed long ago by pestilence or other calamity. That's another myth. Fortunately, we are not left to depend entirely upon surmise in the matter, as the traditions was noted by Haywood some 70 years ago and by another writer some 40 years later, while the connected story could still be obtained from competent authorities. From the various statements, it would seem that the Anikutani were a priestly clan. Let me see if this is my daddy. Excuse me, y'all. All right, so from the various statements, it would seem that the Anikutani were a priestly clan, having hereditary supervision of all religious ceremonies among the Cherokee until, in the consequence, all right. All right. Until in the consequence of having abused their sacred privileges. This is the story. All right. Excuse me, y'all. All right. All right. So, okay, I'm going to start over from here. It says, from the various statements, it would seem that the Anikutani were a priestly clan, having hereditary supervision of all religious ceremonies among the Cherokee, until, in consequence of having abused their sacred privileges, they were attacked and completely exterminated, which is a myth, all right, by the rest of the tribe, leaving the priestly functions to be assumed thereafter by individual doctors and conjurers. Haywood says, without giving name or details, the Cherokees are addicted to conjuration to ascertain whether a sick person will recover. This custom arose after the destruction of their priests. This is a myth. Tradition states that such persons lived among their ancestors and were deemed superior to others and were extirpated long ago. Maybe they meant to use another word. In consequence of the misconduct of one of the priests who attempted to take the wife of a man who was the brother of the leading chief of the nation. A more detailed statement on the authority of Chief John Ross and Dr. J.B. Evans is given in 1866 by a writer who speaks of the massacre as having occurred about the century before. Although from the dimness of the tradition, it is evident that it must have been much earlier. The facts, though few, are interesting. The order was hereditary in this respect, peculiar, for among Indians seldom, and among the Cherokees never, does power pertain to any family as a matter of right. Yet the family of the Nikutani, for it seems to have been a family or a clan, enjoyed this privilege. The power that they exercised was not, however, political, nor does it appear that chiefs were elected from among them. The Nikotani were a mystical religious body of whom the people stood in great awe, and seem to have been somewhat like the Brahmins of Hindustan, they say India. So they're comparing them to the Brahmins of Hindustan. By what means they attained their ascendancy or how long it was maintained can never be ascertained. Their extinction by massacre, the myth, is nearly all that can be discovered concerning them. They became haughty, insolent, overbearing, and licentious to an intolerable degree, relying on their hereditary privileges and the strange awe which they inspired. They did not hesitate by fraud or violence to rend asunder the tender relations of husband and wife when a beautiful woman excited their passions. Let me see. Excuse me. All right. Peace to everybody in the chat. I see some new people in the chat. All right. So, all right. Excuse me. So, all right. By what means they attain their we'll start over here. The Nikutani were a mystical religious body of whom the people stood in great awe and seem to have been somewhat like the Brahmins of Hindustan. By what means they attained their ascendancy or how long it was maintained can never be ascertained. Their extinction by massacre is nearly all that can be discovered concerning them. They became haughty, this is a myth. They became haughty, insolent, overbearing, and licentious to an intolerable degree, relying on their hereditary privilege and the strange awe which they inspired. They did not hesitate by fraud or violence to rend asunder the tender relations of husband and wife when a beautiful woman excited their passions. This is the myth, right? The people long brooded in silence over the oppressions and outrage of this high caste, whom they deeply hated but greatly feared. At length, a daring young man, a member of the influential family, organized a conspiracy among the people for the massacre of the priesthood. The immediate provocation was the abduction of the wife of the young leader of the conspiracy. His wife was remarkable for her beauty and was forcibly abducted and violated by one of the Nikutani, according to this myth, while he was absent on the chase. On his return, he found no difficulty in exciting in others the resentment which he himself experienced. So many had suffered in the same way. So many feared that they might be made to suffer, that nothing was wanted but a leader appearing in the person of the young brave whom we have named. The people rose under his direction and killed every Kutani, according to this myth, young and old. Thus perished a hereditary secret society, since which time no hereditary privileges have been tolerated among the Cherokee. So that is a myth of the Cherokee on the unaliving of the Anikutani. All right, so that is one perspective. Peace, everybody in the chat. Co Halito. All right, so this is one aspect or one perspective of the Anikutani. Now, I did want to visit this. Let's see. All right. So this right here is a Yuchi descendant, Waktila. Okay. So he wrote this, and this is a Yuchi town. All right. He wrote this. Cave inscriptions and conflicting histories of the Sequoia syllabary. All right. Tennessee Indigenous. All right. So, and this is David K. Hackett, ethnohistorian. All right. So this is. Okay, I'll read this part right here, the abstract and then the backstory. The recent rise of speleoarchaeology and the consequent discovery of syllabary inscriptions in caves throughout the Mid-South provides an ideal opportunity to test the conflicting histories of the Sequoia syllabary and possibly to resolve one of the greatest mysteries of American Indian linguistics. The accepted dominant cultural history suggests that about 2 centuries ago, a single individual, George Gist, known also as Sequoia, a mixed heritage, handicapped man of limited education living on the frontier, created the Cherokee orthography spontaneously as an act of pure invention. Since the Mesoamerican syllabaries were not known at the time of this syllabary's supposed invention, this orthographic technique would have been quite a remarkable solution for George Gist Sequoyah to have devised in isolation. An alternate and indigenous version of history written by a descendant of Sequoyah, Traveler Byrd, describes that the syllabary as ancient and that it was adapted. It was adopted. So Sequoyah adopted this, all right? Not created by a very different Sequoyah, a full blood who was a scribe and priest among the Cherokee. In the 1950s, Yuchi chief Sam Brown recounted a long held oral tradition of the syllabary's ancient use by the Yuchi priests in the Southeast. The author discusses these conflicting histories and presents evidence from Yuchian language etymology for the first time ever. He also provides an overview of how linguistics fit into the Yuchi worldview, as well as geomorphic setting, where one term, ka'u, is the backbone of the concepts of town, country, valley, and great valley, and caves are the literal embodiment of the underworld. This paper concludes with a plea for professional archaeologists to involve indigenous peoples in study of such cave art, as well as other indigenous investigations. All right. So, the backstory. The Yuchi were among the rich mix of peoples who formed a melting pot culture in Eastern North America before the post-contact Holocaust. The pre-Mississippian mound building culture was a group of U.S. With a common theocracy. The Yuchi were at the heart of this North American civilization. It has become abundantly clear that the pre-Mississippian mound culture has long been greatly underappreciated. All traces of its history were almost lost to the devastation of the cultural clash. Native American population, decimation and subjugation, and the dominant culture's desire to see indigenous Americans as inferior and incapable of any such civilization. You know, they always thought our people was illiterate and they didn't have advanced shit. Excuse me. All right. So, unfortunately, this bias has continued in East Tennessee archaeology. For 2 decades, the staff of the University of Tennessee has verbally stated that the Yuchi, they have said that the Yuchi never were residents of Tennessee, which is a lie, in direct opposition to prevailing views of most national experts. However, overwhelming evidence, including historical documents, proves this claim to be false. All right. As any professional knows, one cannot prove a negative. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So this claim was obviously fallacious from the beginning and highly suspect for motivation. The official position, as stated in the McClung Museum exhibit, is that it is uncertain and controversial who was here before the Cherokee. This too falls short of an honest assessment. The body of evidence shows that the Yuchi were not only here, but they are still here. Here, both as a remnant population and among the coalescent tribes, and as people of mixed indigenous heritage in the general population. The University of Tennessee's unenlightened position is understood by being one of the few state universities without a formal American Indian Studies program. I would characterize this institution as being less than Indigenous friendly. It is this hostile position with respect to the Yuchi on the part of the on a part of the university in the state of Tennessee that has been a central motivator of my research in the role of my ancestors, the Yuchi. While the university has not changed its position in 20 years, it remains out of step with others in the field. While it is not possible to address all the evidence for the central position of the Yuchi in this overarching Mississippian culture in this brief paper, I do hope to touch on some rich cultural elements that the Yuchi have brought to the Southeast and East Tennessee as part of the metropolitan mix. I also will address how they interacted with the greater landscape, and in particular, the importance of caves and cave inscriptions. Among the unique features of the Yuchian cultural footprint is the Yuchi language. Studies of Yuchian reveal, through its nature as a pristine isolate and its morphine agglomerative structure that is co-evolved with the green corn rite, that form the heart of the pre-Mississippian pan-Eastern theocratic culture. And I did want to show this real quick before we go a little further. Because even when you look up this, all right. So even when you just do a brief search on Google, I just want to read what they had to say, right? It said, Yuchi, Anikutani, refers to an ancient, powerful priesthood within the Cherokee, Ani-Utsi people, Yuchi society, known for their religious authority with roots potentially linked to the Yuchi people themselves, as Yuchi traditions connects them to concepts like brothers or fire priests. Though a major uprising supposedly led to their extermination. You see, they said supposedly by the Cherokee long ago, leaving a significant, though mysterious, legacy in the Southeastern Indigenous history. Who are they? Cherokee priesthood. The Anikutani were a hereditary priestly class or clan responsible for religious ceremonies. The Yuchi connection. The Yuchi language contains related terms suggesting a deep connection. Anikutani or Anikutani means to make brothers in Yuchi, and they were seen as fire priests. Fire priests. They are associated with the long hair clan, the Anigalohi, and fire, connecting them to spiritual power and rituals. So they do basically say the same little myth, right? Right there. So I ain't gonna read that shit again. All right. It says Yuchi oral traditions suggest the Anikutani weren't just a Cherokee group, but an ancient religious order with Yuchi origins, using Yuchi as a liturgical language. Notes, okay? Somebody in a Facebook post that is from Yuchi.org wrote this, right? It says the Anikutani represent a significant, though misunderstood, part of Southeastern Indigenous history, linking the Yuchi and the Cherokee cultures through the ancient spiritual practices, as explored in this Yuchi.org. So, and even in the language, Anikutani or Nikutani is in the Yuchian language. It's not even in the Cherokee language. But this gentleman, this that is of Yuchi ancestry, he wrote this. Let me go back to his. Peace, everybody in the chat. Appreciate y'all tuning in. We're talking about the Yuchi Cherokee connection through this ancient mound building priesthood. All right. And I did read the Cherokee myth of the Anikutani. All right. Let's see. All right. The research is founded on the work of anthropologist Joseph Mahan in recording many of the basic oral traditions told by Chief Samuel W. Brown Jr. and on the efforts of Addie George to preserve the traditions, culture, and language of the Yuchi people, as well as her continued work with linguists James Crawford and Lou Ballard in recording and analyzing. And so they basically, the goal of him writing this is so that they can correct Yuchi history. He wants them to correct this shit. All right. All right. So they put this statement here. The tribal identities of the 16th and 17th century occupants of Tennessee are disputed. By the 18th century, the only native peoples living permanently in Tennessee were the Cherokee, which is a myth. The Chickasaw controlled western Tennessee, but there is no archaeological or historical evidence that they used the area for more than hunting. The Shawnee and the Creek briefly occupied small areas in the state, but little archaeological evidence has been found. So he wants them to correct this shit. He says, even if this statement was truly accurate, the total lack of references to who was in contention for being the proto-historic peoples is a serious marginalization. Instead, this museum gives the strong suggestion in the whole exhibit that the Cherokee were the only Indians, as this is the only reference except to the Cherokee in the museum. However, in actuality, ancestors of the Yuchi, the Kosati, and the Natchez have long been known to be in the region during proto-historic times, and many were absorbed by the Cherokee and population collapse due to the contact Holocaust. All right, so they do have this figure right here. So he's saying that this is where the Yuchi were, and then the Cherokee are right here. So this would, explain like their connection. He even goes on to say that, in which I will read it. He goes on to say that perhaps Sequoia, when he got this syllabary, he got it from the ancient Anikutani, the Nikutani. All right. And he adopted it. Okay. So it was not his invention. He adopted it from the mound building Yuchi, their ancient fire priesthood. All right. And they even go on to say that he may have been Anikutani. So, all right. So they show the map and show that the Yuchi were in Tennessee. All right. Even right here, it has it on this one. This is a Smithsonian, I believe, map. It says that the Yuchi were here in the Cherokee. All right. And then you have the neighboring tribal nations. This is a detailed map of eastern part of early American Indian tribes, culture areas, and linguistic stocks by William C. Sturtevant, Smithsonian Institution, 1976. And then Yuchi areas of principal influence. They show right here. Yuchi Old Fields and Mouse, maybe that's short for creek, or Mouse CK. All right. So this is where the salt was, right? Says Saltville. All right. Salines and trails and Yuchi places. Notice how even today these few historically well-preserved Yuchi and place names are located directly on the trade trails throughout the Southeast. And this is a map of Helen Hornbeck Tanner, map of Powhatan's Mantle, 2006. So he's describing basically the figures, basically. All right. And they did try to say, oh, they just use those areas for hunting only. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So, yeah, it says that they were a mixture, an indigenous mixture. He did state that. Okay. All right. It says, okay, the language and culture. It says, without these founding works, there will be little remaining of the deeper past. But Gunter Wagner's excellent text and the crude works of Gatschet Speck, which are over a century old, Addie George, Lou Ballard, and Joe Mahan urged me to pick up their efforts as holding precious cultural secrets. And I am so very thankful to them for this. So his elders told him to basically pick up the mantle, continue the mission, and make sure the Yuchi gets their fucking respect that they deserve, right? So here we go. Let me make this a little bigger. All right. So oral history combined with language, etymology, ethnology, historic documentation, and archaeology paint a picture of the Yuchi as traders, priests, meaning they traded, the trade. Basically, they traded with other tribes, goods, things of that nature, right? They were priests and linguists among many peoples of the Southeast. As the children of the sun, they were nobility that ruled the white towns as great sons, S-U-N. All right. As they controlled many of the salt licks, they controlled the most vital trade commodity. As speakers of the daunting language, they needed to be multilingual and so became translators and interpreters. As the first immigrant peoples to woodland America, they were met with them the problem of accommodating the waves of immigrants that followed, coming out of the maize corn today, overpopulated Mesoamerica. So a lot of people were coming out of Mesoamerica into the Southeast. While territories and boundaries were not part of the indigenous culture, the Mississippian Yuchi population was shared and centered on East and Central Tennessee. Central Tennessee villages would have been mixed with Algonquin, Shawnee, and Lenape villages, and East Tennessee would have been mixed with Coasati villages, as these are three people that Yuchi held as intimates. Okay, so they communicated with them and corresponded with them. This intimate cultural mixing has created a great amount of confusion for some people in the archaeological inquiries, but is still an important element in Yuchi relations today. This is the Great Valley that they were talking about. Yuk. Ooh. All right. The Yuchi culture and the landscape are deeply carved into one another, as it is clear that the people spent some time in this region. The Yuchi culture evolved in a wetland environment. Their neighbors included the Coasati and the Coosa Creeks, the Shawnee, the Catawba, and other Siouan tribes, and the Cherokee. This places them in the central southeast, the Tennessee Valley. This is just where the Smithsonian and National Geographic and most others have long placed them. Despite the University of Tennessee's claims, there seems to be little controversy here. The Yuchi language further supports the link to the landscape. The morpheme ka'u in Yuchi was broad, meaning that includes valley, tribe, town, and village. And a yuk'u is the word for the Great Valley. If this were not enough, the Yuchian cultural footprint is deeply impressed into the archaeology of the central and eastern portions of Tennessee and up the Great Valley. This central territory allowed the Yuchis to control trade throughout the southeast. In addition to salt from Saltville and other regional salt licks, sources of copper and mica were nearby. Seashells from the Gulf were added to the trade and distributed throughout the eastern woodlands. Yuchi influence stretched out from this region along the major trails. Oral traditions are suspect for the prevalence of mythic content they so often contain, but they may be tested. It is such cross-referencing and interdisciplinary studies that are entertained here in testing how oral tradition and Yuchi culture meet the challenges of language, landscape, and logic to form a coherent picture. Location and language studies have already strongly supported oral traditions of Yuchi, central involvement in trade and spread of religious rites and culture in the Mississippian Southeast. Yuchi association with salt licks and salt production has continued well into the 20th century in Oklahoma. The presence of Yuchi villages and place names along major trade arteries and at trail nodes throughout the Southeast also strongly supports the involvement in trade, as does the widespread borrowing of the term Yadjiki, all right, in other languages as the term for translator or interpreter. While it is all circumstantial, the body of circumstantial evidence which hangs together here is substantial enough to bring support to the oral traditions. As Thoreau has appended, some circumstantial evidence is very strong, and when you find a trout in the milk. Yuchi oral traditions state that the syllabary was originally used by the Yuchi priest scribes, which were known as Sa'akwaya, woodpecker talk, or earth singer fire. Thusly, according to Yuchi tradition, the syllabary was not invented by Sequoia, but merely adapted for use with Cherokee. Sequoia was an Ani Kutani priest among the Chickamauga, coalescent tribe, according to the Traveler Bird account. And I did pull up the Chickamauga, all right? While this contracts the popular supported history, there would appear to be more documentation to support this alternate view that can often tell. All right. And I just got to read this again. Yuchi oral tradition states that the syllabary was originally used by the Yuchi priest scribes. So that will be the Anikutani, all right, which were known as the Sa'akwaya, woodpecker talk, or earth singer fire. Thusly, according to the Yuchi tradition, The syllabary was not invented by Sequoyah, but merely adapted for the use with Cherokee. Sequoyah was an Anikutani priest among the Chickamauga, coalescing tribe according to the Traveler Bird account. While this contradicts the popular supported history, there would appear to be more documentation to support this alternate view than the often told tale, which is very interesting. Very interesting. All right. On the face of it, the popular story lacks for credibility. This tale would have us believe that I feel he's being sarcastic right here. Excuse me. He said that would have us believe that an illiterate and handicapped mixed heritage man living on the frontier conceived a syllabary and crafted it single-handedly, a feat never achieved by any other person in history. While syllabaries were relatively unknown even in academic circles at the time, it is now known that the syllabary is nearly identical to the Mesoamerican syllabaries of the Olmec, the She, the Mayan, the Aztec. All right. I will group them and say, oh, mixed tech. This is my side note. All right. So, in a syntactical structure and grammatical usage. All right. So this syllabary, they're saying it's identical to the Mesoamerican syllabaries. This cannot be merely accidental or coincidental. It is clear from this basic structural similarity that the syllabary is based in the Mesoamerican syllabary tradition. All right, and I'm gonna pull up the syllabary. So this is, all right, where is, so, okay, they got the okay, so this is Sequoiah's order of the syllabary, right? And I've been trying to learn this shit. Now I know some Cherokee words. We have at the meetings, we have games where we learn the words and things of that nature. And I have done some of the language classes online. But they also show like these are the numbers. And these are the phonetics. All right. So again, this is for teaching and scholarship and research purposes. All right. So where's this other one? And so this one is from says Olmec writing, the oldest in Western Hemisphere. So I'm just showing this because they mentioned that the syllabary in nature is similar. So this is the Cascajal block, an ancient slab of writing. Okay. So, and they said it was similar in a certain nature. All right. Let me go back. All right, right here. It says, while syllabaries were relatively unknown even in academic circles at the time, it is now known that the syllabary is nearly identical to the Mesoamerican syllabaries of the Olmec, the She, the Mayan, the Aztec in syntactical structure and grammatical usage. This cannot merely be accidental or coincidental. It is clear from the basic structural Similarity that the syllabary is based in Mesoamerican syllabary tradition. The Yuchi cultural footprint is indelibly impressed in the Tennessee region, not only in the wetland environment and valley significance left in the language, nor just the neighbors shared, but also in the culture left in the ground. Certain cultural traits are clearly in the mix of cultural detritus spread among the rich archaeology of Central Basin in Tennessee Valley. The Yuchi cultural footprint would include extended and line burial of the dead and other burial practices. And they were mound builders too, so it would include semi-subterranean trench wall houses. It will include plain pottery and pipes with a flared rim around the bowl and or stem. It will include storytelling stones and most importantly, language left on the landscape. And if this were not enough, there are a few historical records and many oral traditions that still link the Yuchi here in Tennessee. That's what he's talking about. All these footprint elements are found in the mix here in Tennessee. And while it may be difficult at times to attribute a particular site as they were so often shared, the Yuchi presence in the mix is unmistakable. The fact that tribes and cultures are rather thoroughly mixed. All right. The tribes we know today are associated with a dominant language and culture, but are made up of long period of agglomerations and coalescence. It is quite clear that during the time of contact, the population collapsed and depopulating varied widely according to the place and circumstance, with typically 90% dying in a very short space in time. This is what they say. The result was that nearby villages agglomerated for survival. All right. And often there were peoples of a different culture and language, but then became tribes we know today. Like even the Cherokee Nation is a mix of tribes because on the rolls, they may say, oh, they're this tribe, but they were adopted into the Cherokee Nation. So we know several tribes have been formulated like that. All right. They come together under a banner of one tribal nation. All right. So I will also argue that trade and religious structure have fueled such agglomeration at a lower level for many centuries. As DNA is sorted out, there will be undoubtedly be as much relationship between all of these people as there are differences, belying the cultural differences themselves. This is to say that the Southeastern states have long been a melting pot, particularly along the main byways. This has left a patchwork appearance of the many cultures and a confusion that confounds those who believe that these peoples held territories and defended boundaries. It is quite clear from all the evidence that Yuchi oral traditions are true. It was many peoples, but one nation under a common theocracy, the first U.S. of this land. So they compared it. All right. Basically, they did that little analogy. He did. Aside from the Yuchi language, the most important Yuchi cultural item is the green corn, right? All right. So the green corn, right? And I will do a side note on that. It is based in a worldview. All right, let me go here before I go too hard. All right. How y'all doing in the chat? Because I'm gonna read all of this, the majority of it, I would say. And then towards the end, I'm gonna bring Pa, and if nephew is still in the building, I'm gonna bring him in too towards the end. So, all right, here we go. All right, so we'll just look at the overview. All right. The Yuchi Anikutani Green Corn Ceremony is a sacred multi-day festival of renewal, purification, and thanksgiving for the corn harvest, marking the new year for many Southeastern Indigenous peoples, involving fasting, feasting, dancing, spiritual cleansing like ritual bathing, the lighting of a new fire, and the ceremonial renewal of sacred objects, symbolizing community unity and gratitude to the Creator. It is a time of forgiveness, naming ceremonies, coming of age rituals, and reaffirming cultural identity, with traditions varying slightly by tribe but centered on the ripened corn. All right. Timing. It is held in late summer, July, August. All right. Some would say June in that time when the corn ripens, varying slightly by the community. All right. It's to give thanksgiving for honoring the Creator for the corn, rain, and a good harvest. Renewal, spiritual cleansing, forgiving past wrongs and starting anew. Community, uniting people through shared ritual and strengthening bonds. Rituals, fasting and purification, fasting, drinking, purging drinks, and ceremonial bathing, often 7 times counterclockwise. New fire, kindling a new fire, sacred fire in the town square. All right. Feasting, sharing the first green corn after purification, ceremonial objects, renewal of medicine bundles and sacred items, especially for tribes like the Seminole. Social events, you have ball games, storytelling, naming ceremonies, and coming of age rites. Significance for the Yuchi. The ceremony is central to traditional Yuchi life, defining their identity and connection to the land and Creator. It's a powerful expression of gratitude and a way to reset spiritual and communal life for the coming year. Despite historical disruptions, the green corn ceremony is actively practiced today by the Yuchi and other southeastern tribes. Also, the Cherokee, the Creek, the Choctaw, the Seminole, as a vital part of our cultural heritage. All right. And I did relate the Anikutani to the ancient women's society that exists within the long hair clan of the Jalagi. So this came from the live that I did on the 7 clans of the Cherokee, which it started out as 12, but some of them are absorbed into others, right? So the Wind Clan, Long Hair Clan, the Twister Clan, it also housed the ancient warrior woman society, the beloved women, the Gigas, and it was called Gitla Gunahita. Galahi, Giga. All right. It was the long hair clan, absorbed into the long hair clan. This was the ancient warrior woman society. They were the warrior women, the beloved women, the teachers, keepers of tradition. Peace chiefs came from this clan. They wore white feathers. The woman, they decided who basically was unalived. They decided the fate of the prisoners of war, if they were to be unalive or to be adopted into the tribe. They adopted, the people that were adopted were absorbed into the tribe. They also used the nuts and the barks of the beech tree to cleanse the body of parasites. The beloved women wore long hair and elaborate hairdos. So this cleansing part, like the green corn, the rites, there is cleansing and purification. All right. And giving thanks and feasting and playing games, etc. So ceremony is done first. All right. So I wanted to show the similarity, the parallels between the ancient woman society and the ancient male society, the Nikutani, the Anikutani, right? Within the Yuchi. All right. So I wanted to show the similarities of that. All right, let's go back. All right. So it says, aside from the Yuchi language, the most important Yuchi cultural item is the green corn rite. It is based in a worldview that features a three-tiered universe. All right. And other Southeastern tribal nations view the world in this way. Okay. The upper world, the spiritual realm, is where the ancestors go after death. And it is an element in why the temple mound and the chief's lodge are elevated. Okay. Elevated on top of the mound, the temple mound, right? It was here that the ancestor statues and relics were stored. The middle world is where the common everyday life unfolds, okay, on the earthly realm, right? And the underworld is where the future takes shape. It is in caves that the priests gathered to influence the future. Cave in Yuchian is Sa'akab A or Tikab A, where the morphemes literally, all right, earth snake birth. So I have earth snake birth and rock snake birth. The rattlesnake birth is the morpheme pair for a cave or a hollow in the earth. Rattlesnake is another important symbol, and a speech in Yuchian is the morphemes for the rattlesnakeman, Gukha. And this is, where is that? I just want to show a picture of this. Okay. So the rattlesnake, since they mentioned the rattlesnake, because I love the spiritual aspects. That's talk spiritual to me. I talk back. That type of thing. All right. So I love the spiritual aspects of our indigenous cultures. All right. So the rattlesnake. Let's look at the overview real quick. All right. Okay, there isn't a widely known, it says Yuchi snake ceremony, but the most famous Native American snake ceremony involving rattlesnakes is the Hopi snake dance. So they only talk about the Hopi in this aspect. Okay, so we will go back to that because I ran across some stuff that did talk about um, the Yuchi rattlesnake. Okay. All right. This shows more. All right. This thing is saying the audio. Let me check the audio because they be tripping sometime. Excuse me, I'm just checking. Excuse me, I'm just checking. Yeah, it's good. All right. A Yuchi rattlesnake refers to the cultural significance and native name for rattlesnakes among the Yuchi, Soyaha people who revered them as powerful spiritual beings, with their name for the timber rattlesnake being Uneka, a term also used for mountains, highlighting their deep spiritual connection to these reptiles in their traditions. While there isn't a distinct biological Yuchi rattlesnake species, it signifies the Yuchi people's specific relationship with various regional rattlesnakes, like the timber rattlesnake, viewing them as powerful shamanistic symbols, so medicine person symbols connected to the underworld and lightning. So when they go in these caves and do ceremony, this is a significant symbol, the rattlesnake. All right. All right, so it says key aspects of Yuchi culture and rattlesnakes. Spiritual significance. Rattlesnakes were considered powerful underworld creatures, with Yuchi priests seeking them out for spiritual insight, even allowing bites under specific ceremonial conditions. Naming. The Yuchi name for the timber rattlesnake is Uneka. All right. Uneka also identifies mountains, showing a broad spiritual link to these animals and landscapes. Mythology. All right. They're allegorical stories, they're mythology. Rattlesnakes were associated with the horned serpent and symbolic power, featuring in myths about transformation and spiritual journeys. Conservation. The Yuchi people's deep spiritual connection fosters a unique respect, contrasting with the often violent human interaction seen in some areas. All right. In essence, Yuchi rattlesnake is a cultural term for rattlesnake's role and meaning in Yuchi traditions rather than a separate species name. All right. So, and one of their symbols is, let's see, okay, this one. Okay, so this is the symbol. All right, the snake gorget engraving. All right. Snakes, they mean fertility. The shedding of the skin is like a rebirth or a transformation. And this eye is one who sees, a seer. All right. Yeah. So this is like the other tribal nations have a similar symbol. And Ouroboros, that symbol is similar to this. So these are some of the other symbols, all right? All right. It represents the cycle of life. Birth, life, death, rebirth, resurrection, the constant cycle of life. Okay. So I just like to show our similarities and parallels. So this shows like Yuchi numbers, all right? Yuchi colors and some of their vocabulary. So that's just the Yuchi language primer, a brief introductory grammar. All right. So, all right. So I just wanted to show that because it correlates with what I'm talking about. Okay. So, all right. So we were talking about the rattlesnake, right? All right. So the rattlesnake birth is the morpheme pair for a cave or hollow in the earth. Rattlesnake is another important symbol and a speech in Yuchian. Is the morphemes for rattlesnake man or Goka, calling up the wisdom from the underworld. So they use that, the spiritual snake, to conjure up wisdom from the underworld, right? The Yuchi still venerate caves and still build a symbolic mound on their square ground. These symbols of the pre-Mississippian glyphs are still remembered in the Yuchi oral traditions, but more importantly, most are fundamentally linked to the morpheme structure of language, revealing that the green corn rite and the Yuchi language co-evolved. So the green corn rite, and the Yuchi language co-evolved. What this interdisciplinary investigation has revealed is that the landscape, the Yuchi language, and the green corn religious traditions formed as an interdependent interaction of mutual influence co-evolved. The need to build mounds on the floodplain to retreat from floods, and the use of solar nobility to bind the peoples in peace. All right. The trade in the Appalachian corridor trails, the wetlands environment, the Yuchi language requiring the people to become multilingual, the abundance of caves, and the waves of immigration all conspired to create a multicultural melting pot and a need for a peace-centered theocratic society to bring it all together. The Yuchi were a unique people at the right place to bring this culture together. Just when the agricultural wealth created a population influx, the Tennessee Valley became the cradle of a great nation of many peoples, living together under a common theocracy and enjoying a flourishing trade of materials and religious objects. This halcyon time was undermined first by a series of droughts, perhaps followed by plagues, and then by the disease holocaust of contact. As disease swept through the population, collapsed catastrophically. Okay, so it did decrease the numbers, all right? Some villages were decimated, agglomerated, and the centuries of contact became a time of coalescence of the peoples and the culture. It is the drastic changes and difference of worldviews that have made it so difficult for the pre-contact period to be conceived by those considering it now. It is difficult for a people steeped in territorialism, war, and ownership. They talking about the colonizers, the invaders. They were so focused on territorialism and war, even though our tribal nations, various tribal nations of indigenous peoples, yes, they did have battles and wars. Yes, they did, but not to the extent of the colonizers, okay? So let me skip around a little bit. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it's a lot of cultural eccentricities, even maintaining a very pristine language isolate such as Yuchian. Yet, when the strife of contact ends, little of the green corn mound culture remains visible, but it is still here. It is preserved only in the hardcore traditions of few elders and coded into the Yuchian language and the green corn rites. All that remains, for the most part, is a few coalescent tribes, each claiming the dimly remembered past glory of as their own. All right, so this is where they start talking about the syllabary. And it says, it is into the context that we now place our inquiry about the rise of the syllabary, Yuchian oral tradition, Cherokee written history, and more than a couple of historic references call the widely accepted version into question. There's also a bit of credibility factor in the accepted story that has an illiterate. Okay, and here he's reaffirming what he said earlier. So we're gonna skip down a little bit because he said that he kind of pissed when he's writing this. I can tell. Because he like, y'all gonna give the Yuchi the credit and respect that they deserve. All right. It says, there is no question that symbols and symbolism, my favorite language, all right, were an important part of the pre-Mississippian culture. Other than the Back Creek stone and a few other inscribed stones that remain controversial, there are no accepted inscriptions that predate circa 1810 timeline for the supposed invention of the syllabary. And he's just saying that it had existed for before this time. The dominant view that indigenous people were illiterate prevails. Some people in history, all these people that were writing these books, they were thinking that indigenous people were illiterate, right? However, there are documented references in primary historic papers to the syllabary being used before its supposed invention. So it was evidence of the syllabary being used before its supposed invention by Sequoia, he's saying, right? While none of these has been thoroughly investigated, there are more substantial than any evidence supporting the accepted legend of Sequoia. While this paper does not include incontrovertible evidence between these alternatives, it will add substantial circumstantial evidence that the story is more complicated and much more likely that the syllabary is based in the original Mesoamerican traditions of writing than the popular myth has allowed. All right. And here's a glyph right here. It says Yuchi oral tradition are largely consistent with the traveler bird account of the syllabary, except they do not lump all these peoples into the coalescent term Cherokee. While traveler bird mentions the priests, aka the Nikutani, the Anikutani, he does not mention their Yuchian heritage. All right, so Traveler Bird did not include that these were Yuchi mound building fire priests. Okay, it says the Anikutani remain a controversial subject among the Cherokee, who alternately show active fear of them and proclaim that they were exterminated long time ago, which is a myth. Okay, the fact that the tribes were all much mixed by coalescent and few were more coalescent than the Chickamaugas. The priests, while of mixed blood as well, still needed the hereditary link to the son of a Yuchian ancestry. So they had to have Yuchian ancestry, all right, to be one of these Anikutani or Nikutani priests. All right. To firm up this line of thought, just consider the name Sequoia. It has no Cherokee etymology, even though it is often translated into the Cherokee as horse or Saguali. Saguali. Saguili. As mentioned in the backstory, Sakakwaya is derived from woodpecker and interpret in Yuchi, in the Yuchi language. So his name is in Yuchian language. He has a Yuchian name, all right? And it has meaning of being a messenger, a scribe. Another word, so this is the Yuchi word for messenger or scribe also, because the Cherokee word for messenger is anidohi. All right, the sound of pecking a message into stone or wood would sound like a woodpecker. Thus, it really is not a name, but a title that was given to the priest scribes. It is here noted that a common glyph inscribed into cave walls is that of a woodpecker head with an open mouth. This is Sakakwaya glyph. The other common glyph, which occurs at the point where outside light ceases to penetrate the cave, is the sun image of the So or Soyati glyphs. All right. So this is a glyph, and they say it is a woodpecker. And it looks like and I have said that it could have been like it's a headdress that has a woodpecker on it, or just a woodpecker with its mouth open, but it looks like a bird within a bird. That's what it looks like to me. So, of course, our indigenous ancestors, the different animals, raptors, reptiles, etc. We tapped into what they were on a spiritual level, mental, and physical level. All right. Therefore, you have animal spirit guides, or you have animal totems to represent your clan, etc. Right. All right. So we did read that. All right. So it says, while symbols and symbolism were widely understood by Southeastern peoples, writing was reserved for an elite few among the priesthood and not shared with the masses. So only certain people could be, write the stuff down, the scribes, the messengers, all right? You had to be a part of the elite priesthood, right? It says, as such, it will not be widely found in most archaeological contexts today. The secrecy surrounding the writing would make it a rare find, but because caves were a sacred realm of the priests, because they would go into the womb of Mother Earth and do these ceremonies, right? This is one place one should expect to find writing and inscriptions hidden away from prying eyes, and yet available for teaching the art of acolytes. All right. I'm thinking that's like similar to like the novices. So you will have the apprentice, and then you will have basically the high priest. They were, teaching them how to do these things, right? Okay. The more common symbol glyphs have been found in numerous caves throughout the Kars region of the central Southeast. One would expect to find a few examples of the syllabary here as well. This is indeed the case. Caves have been found in Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama with syllabary inscriptions. However, only the Alabama inscription seems to confirm closely with modern Cherokee syllabary, as does a log cabin inscription in Georgia. None have yielded entirely to translation. The Tennessee cave inscription was not available for study. The Alabama inscription, unnamed Cave 63, is very likely a Cherokee inscription, as is the Georgia cabin one, and so not further considered here. The Clay County, Kentucky cave inscription seems to be of the greatest interest here. All right, and this is these are the inscriptions, right? So they're relating this to language, too, with showing who the fire priests are. So you have the male fire priest, and then you have the women, ancient women's society of the Cherokee. They had these writings, okay, and basically he was saying that the language is the footnote that will basically tell you the identity of it, where it came from, the origin of it, what people it came from, etc. So I'm skipping around a little bit, but they do he does talk about this again, and he says the syllabary has the same syntactical structure as other Mesoamerican syllabaries. That is, there is an array of glyphs that represent the vowels and others that represents the consonant vowels. Ending consonants are represented by using the principal consonant vowel of that series and understanding that the vowel is silent. This deployment is not a predetermined or a singularly logical construction, but is a choice among many. For this feature to be shared between the Cherokee syllabary and the Olmec, Mayan, and Aztec syllabaries, strongly suggests a common origin and etymological ancestry. While the glyphs themselves vary greatly between these syllabaries, as do some of the vowel and consonant sounds, the basic syntactical structure of them is identical. This is neither accidental or coincidental, but the result of a common origin. The Mesoamerican syllabaries were not understood in Sequoia's time, and so could not have been used as a guide creating the syllabary, unless it was by a long tradition of use from those earliest times. So he was being sarcastic. He was saying that basically these syllabaries have been here a long time. All right. This is what he's saying. Excuse me. All right. So, this is what he's saying, that these syllabaries have been here a long time. All right. So, I'm not going to read all of this, but I wanted to give y'all the meat and potatoes and show how these ancient societies, how they are connected. All right. And he goes on to, he has some sarcastic comments in there because he wants the Yuchi to have their proper respect. All right. So this is So he's comparing Traveler Bird's account of the syllabary, and then he is talking about the Yuchi words, the Yuchi language, all right, and Mesoamerican syllabaries, how this is similar, all right. Okay. Says Yuchi words rendered into the syllabary. So Yaha, Yugiha, and Sultan Niwa no. Because Cherokee has fewer phonemes, the syllabary would need more characters to fully render a Yuchian orthography. Just what the one on the left has 92 rather than the 86 of the current one. Okay. So there he's saying basically this one has 92 and the Cherokee syllabary he's saying has 86. So he just shows example. And these people are doing a Yuchi language project. All right. All right. So basically, he does give some book references. The Native Americans, the Indigenous People of North America, the Handbook of North American Indians, Yuchi Ceremonial Life, and I tried to pull up this book, and they just mainly, on a lot of different sites where I pull up books, they just show the first page. But Yuchi Ceremonial Life, Performance, Meaning, and Tradition in a Contemporary American Indian Community. Cherokee Prehistory, the Pasca Phase in the Appalachians, Remnant Yuchi Nation, the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture, and Creek Country, the Creek Indians and their world. Creek Country, the Creek Indians and their world. Early history of the Creek Indians and their neighbors. Indians of the Southeastern United States. The Yuchi Green Corn Ceremonial Form and Meaning. Yuchian Lexicon, Studies in Southeastern Indian Languages, Yuchi Tales, Yuchi Tribal Archives. So these are where he did his research. He looked to see basically was they represent his people right. So he did give these sources. Identification of the Soyaha Wayno builders of the temple mounds. Earth medicine. Let's see. So he gave a lot of book sources, which I like when they give a lot of book sources. That way you can read it for yourself. They don't even. Okay, so a lot of these, unless I like sign up for some of this, it's not letting me view it. But of course they want you to buy it too. All right, this one. Let's see if they will pull up this one because I want to see this one too. And anybody got any comments or questions? In a minute, I'm gonna pull Pi in here if he's still up because I know he got to go to work in the morning early. He got to get up. I gotta get up early, but not as early as he does. Let's see. They only give a preview of this one. The identification of Soyaha Wano, builders of temple mounds. So they only have, they got a little bit of stuff. They got 24 pages that they share. But they got 24 pages that they share of this one. And it just basically talks about mound builders of the 16th century and later. Prehistoric mound builders. Okay, this is about the Yuchi. All right, the fire sun deity religion. So Yaha or Yastafa Wano, the order of the four roads, the Sala Laweno or Sahaweno, the eagle men. So they just basically showing like the table of contents. So these are interesting books if you want to, tap into this. But I wanted to show the ancient woman society and the ancient priesthood because there are Cherokee myths, the myths of the Cherokee that speak about the Anikutani. And the Anikutani are Yuchi mound builders that had this priesthood, basically. And they handled all the religious rites, okay, for the Cherokee people. Cherokee people still do celebrate green corn today. And the women wear the turtle shells. Is the same thing. It's the same thing that I broke down earlier. The purification, all the prep, and then the feasting, the fasting and the feasting, and the playing games and doing the stomp dance, etc. So the core principles are there. And let's see, this is talking about what was the nature of an intertribal organization of priests, prophets, peace chiefs, and medicine men, which was common to most of the later tribes, but of which details were only sketchily known, even to those white men who had spent years among the tribes. Like James Mooney and all of them, they tried to spend time with the tribes and learn like their formulas, etc. I have, read the formulas in James Mooney's book and the myths of the Cherokee too. So, they do only have, they got like 24 pages. They don't got the whole book, but they talk about the religious ceremonies, and the green corn was a very important one. They talk about the language, etc. So anybody we can Google that unless there was a person. Halito Cuzzy Bear, if you still on here, I didn't even see this because I was reading. How somebody asked, How did the Yuchi migrate to Georgia? It says the Yuchian people migrated to Georgia in waves during the 17th and 18th century from their original homelands in eastern Tennessee. So the gentleman that wrote that book is of Yuchian ancestry, and he was just making sure the University of Tennessee got his ancestors' history correct, saying that they were in Tennessee also. All right. It says establishing settlements along the Savannah and Chattahoochee rivers, often aligning with or settling near the Creek Confederacy for trade and defense against other tribes and colonial powers like the Spanish and French. They became allies with early Georgia colonists, but eventually most were forcibly removed with the Creeks to Indian Territory in Oklahoma in the 1830s. So when they break down the initial presence, the 17th century shift, the Yamasee War, 1715, Savannah River settlement, alliance with Georgia, dispersion and removal, Indian removal, etc. All right, y'all. So I've been on here, let's see, an hour and 41 minutes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Coosa were in the southeast, in Tennessee and Alabama. So they were, the Coosa chieftain was in Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. Anybody else got any comments or questions? I'm about to bring Pa on. Look like nephew left the building. He probably got to get up early too. Let's see. So, the Chickamauga also, they have something to say too, in relation to some of this. And it's very interesting. I may touch on that when I have my turn next month, because me and Pa, we take turns. We each have a solo day, and then we have our Sunday panel discussion days. So I'm gonna bring him on in. Peace, cuz, you still there? Pa. He might have went to sleep. Let me call him. Y'all doing all right in the chat? Appreciate y'all for tuning in. So next Sunday, it'll be Pa's day. And he will be on here with y'all. I'll be in the background periodically. Checking in, making sure everything is flowing good. Let me see. Yeah, he probably done fell asleep. Last call. Y'all got any comments or questions? He must have fell asleep.
I'm up.
Yes, you are. Uh-huh. Okay. I got you on. You on the screen. I'm closing out. You got any comments? If you talking, we can't hear you. If you talking, we can't hear you. Excuse me, I'm just Pa. If you Oh, okay, let me call him one more again.
I don't know why this thing is not letting me on.
I got you up there, but you gotta I tried to unmute your mic, but it says you have your mic muted.
Trying to see what it says. Okay, all right, I got it.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know why this thing. I think this earpiece had actually dropped.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's a good that's a good show.
Well, why though, cuz showing a bitch dream.
Can you, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I said showing a bitch yati.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you got
So
any comments for the people?
yeah, well, um, the college people in them was trying to say that it was a myth, but yet um dealing with that, what most people don't know is that the Cherokee and them actually migrated from the Great Lakes area to the Tennessee area. But when they moved there, the Yuchi was already there.
Right,
That's
right.
the part that they left out. Now why they left that part out, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, even on that map.
But
Go ahead.
nephew got a book out that's called Not So Cherokee, and he goes into depth when he speaks about that.
Oh,
So, he drive. Yeah. So, I'm about to go get my book, when I get paid. So, yeah.
okay. He got another one, huh? Okay.
Yeah, that book called Not So Cherokee. It
Okay.
dropped in the beginning of this year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the people that don't got any more comments or questions, uh, I did answer the questions that were in the chat. So I told them you'll be on next Sunday, and I'll be in the background periodically, checking in, and they can come back next Sunday. You got any last words?
No, that will be it.
All right, y'all. Well, peace and love to everybody. We appreciate y'all tuning in to Southeastern Talking Stick podcast, and I'm gonna share this last little deal, and we can close on out. Let's see. So if y'all want to support, we do have merch. Y'all can see us on all our social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. So we do have our merch. So stand on business, represent your bloodline. We got hoodies, shirts, mugs, etc. So y'all can check us out. All right, on that note, I'm out. Peace.